One approach that would be helpful at the end of each of our sessions for gas welding or any other process would be some exercises or practice things that you can do in your own shop that would improve your skills. For gas welding, I'd like to do 2 exercises that I think would be of benefit. One is to run filler beads and regular beads just on some excess sheet metal that we have laying around. And the other is to do a non-filler rod uphill approach to moving a puddle, drawing heat, make a weld on a vertical up piece of sheet metal. Take some old metal that you have around, in this case the sheet metal that we've been toasting and running beads on, and run practice beads on it with and without filler rod. Bring your cone in to a neutral flame. That's right there. This is an oxidizing flame. Too much oxygen, too little oxygen. Carburizing flame. Cone is even. We've got this soot all over here now from the acetylene running rich and carburizing. We'll try it without filler first. Heat your metal to a liquid form. Remember that with gas welding or any other process, the heat is actually drawing the puddle along. So you want to create a puddle. You notice I'm using an oscillating, or in this case circular motion. There's no welding filler involved. And that's just a practice bead. We'll do that again. And remember to liquefy the metal before you start moving your puddle along. And watch the coloration. You see the puddle actually become wet. And start moving it. Using a circular motion. Could use a straightforward motion would work here too, like that. This exercise will be to introduce filler metal. Remember now we're going to form a liquid puddle and we're going to dip the filler into the liquid puddle as we move the puddle slowly forward with an oscillating motion. Let's watch how that bead is formed, and this is a practice that you can do repeatedly with old scrap sheet metal that you have laying around. Again, observe our cone. We've got a neutral cone. It's not formed out too far. It's slightly oxidizing. Remember that we're just using scrap, and this is strictly practice. Steel is expensive, so if you can use it for practice on this level, do so. And the idea again, we're using ER70S2 rod, and we're going to use the filler appropriately. Heat the metal, don't overheat it. Bring the metal to a liquid state. We're going to dip the filler into it. If I have one singular complaint with gas welding is that you're putting a lot of heat into the metal over a broad area. And so it's different than TIG in that regard. This is 68 thousandths sheet. And so you can burn a hole in this real quick. We'll start another one here. Notice the metal is really hot. So I keep pulling the torch back away from the metal. That draws the heat away at the same time. We'll start with form a puddle. And I'm going to move this along quickly because this is really thin sheet. And the heat is just sinking into the metal. It's one of the characteristics of gas welding. Not its most endearing quality. And that's what we're doing here. So run beads, run them 1 inch long, run them 2 inches, whatever. Use up that scrap metal that you have. Here's an interesting practice step that you can do. Place your sheet metal in a vertical position, and what we're going to do here is actually do practice beads uphill, vertical up, without filler rod, so that you can learn more about controlling the puddle and how heat draws or pulls the puddle in the direction that you want the torch to move. Upward in this case, in the direction of the torch movement. Okay, again we establish a neutral flame, have our acetylene move out away from the torch, come back to the torch, bring the oxygen up, still a carburizing flame, there's a neutral flame, there's an oxidizing flame, back to carburizing and to a neutral flame. Now the goal in this case is to, without the use of filler rod, run an uphill, vertical up, puddle using the torch in a manner that we will draw the puddle upward with the heat. The first objective is to create a molten puddle. You see it liquefying. Start moving the torch upward. You can oscillate back and forth slightly. You can run a relatively straight bead up. The objective is to move that heat upward and to draw the puddle. The next goal in this practice would be to put a piece alongside of that and actually do a fusion weld with gas vertical up without filler rod. These practice gas welding steps with and without filler rod will be very helpful. Learn to move the puddle around with the heat. Draw the puddle, pull the puddle in different directions, pull your heat in, pull your heat out. Learn the limits. Understand that it's not easy to weld sheet of 16 gauge or lighter. That's the realm of body and fender work, and my hat goes off to those folks who day in and day out weld panels together in sheet metal for automotive repairs. So give this some practice, and when you feel like you have it in hand, we'll move on to the next phase, which is welding different positions and welding actual pieces of metal together. We'll move up in gauge size and make this a bit easier.